For the next 2 minutes, turn and share with someone next to you. Who is the most wise person that you know? What wisdom have they given you? Now, let your partner share. Are you ready? Shh, quiet please. We're about to start. Now let's take a look back at our story so far. The Bible is a sacred story, echoed to us from the ancients. An epic, revealing the great Creator's pursuit of wholeness for all of creation. May we find ourselves in this amazing story. During the time of the judges, tragedy struck Naomi, an Israelite woman. Her husband and both of her grown sons had died. But her daughter-in-law, Ruth, clung to Naomi and vowed to take care of her. Because they were poor, Ruth gathered leftover grain for food. The field owner, Boaz, was a wealthy relative of Naomi. He thanked Ruth for caring for Naomi and gave her grain and water. When Naomi heard about this, she sent Ruth to meet with Boaz. That night, Ruth snuck into where Boaz was sleeping and laid down by him. Later, Boaz awoke, startled. Ruth told him, "Cover me with your blanket, for you are my family redeemer." This was symbolic. Ruth was asking him to marry her. Boaz was surprised and excited. He thought she would seek out a younger man. Soon, Boaz and Ruth were married and started a family. Years later, one of their descendants would become a king of Israel. The Israelites ignored the warnings that human kings are controlling and greedy, and insisted that they have a king like other nations had. So God chose Saul to be their king, a tall and handsome warrior who defeated Israel's enemies on every side. But Saul treated his people harshly and ignored God's ways. So God secretly chose David, a young shepherd boy, to be the next king. But his time to be king wouldn't come until years later. Meanwhile, King Saul was overcome with anger and madness. Musicians tried to soothe his mind. One of them was David. Saul grew to love David and made him a trusted servant. Saul's son became David's best friend. Then David married Saul's daughter. Before long, David was made commander of Israel's armies, and the people sang songs about his greatness. This made Saul angry and jealous. So the next time David played music for him, Saul hurled a spear at him. David dodged the spear and ran away. In his madness, King Saul sent soldiers to kill David, but David escaped and hid in a cave. There, David poured out his heart to God through music called psalms. Before long, Saul was killed in battle, and David was made king. David deeply loved God, but he wasn't perfect. Once, David had an affair with his general's wife. To cover it up, David left the general stranded in battle, and he was killed. But David turned his heart back to God and tried to lead the people in following God's ways. Later in his life, David's son, Absalom, became very popular with the Israelites. He stirred up a revolt and drove David out of the kingdom. Then, Absalom and his soldiers chased after David, but David's soldiers fought back. During the battle, Absalom's hair got caught in a tree, and he was killed by David's general against David's orders. David was overwhelmed with grief, but returned home to lead Israel again. He was king for many years and was loved by God and all the people. In our next story, David's son Solomon becomes the wisest and most prosperous king in Israel's history. Let's continue this story right now.